Hello, friends. Today we're going to talk about a really interesting topic. I'm Melissa. I'm a Harvard trained leadership and high performance coach. And today we're going to talk about why we do the things that we don't actually want to do and why we procrastinate, why we don't go after the goals that we know internally that we really want to achieve. I'm going to cut to the chase. The reason we really do this is to avoid negative emotion.
I'm in a glass case of emotion!
We want to avoid feeling negative emotion because it feels almost painful to us. I mean, it's all there in the title. It's negative emotion. We labeled it as something bad. The thing is, negative emotion doesn't have to be so negative. And if we actually get good at feeling these negative emotions, we can essentially become almost superhuman. We can really do anything that we set our hearts and our minds to doing because we're not going to be deterred by the potential imaginary or even real pain of so-called negative emotion. So, our culture doesn't really teach us how to embrace bad emotions. We even call them bad feelings. And there's something to be avoided according to kind of the general consensus.
Serenity now!
The thing is, when we study psychology or neuroscience, we know that negative emotions and positive emotions aren't necessarily good or bad. They're both very necessary to the survival of the human species. And without negative emotions, none of us would be here. And the thing is that they serve different purposes in the brain. So positive emotions broaden and build, and negative emotions really narrow our focus and help us solve very, very discrete problems. And when we can accept that negative and positive emotions are equally valuable and equally useful to our lives, we can harness the negative to our advantage instead of being afraid of it or avoiding it. This is actually called harnessing in psychology. I know we're super creative in our naming of things. So most of us have done harnessing at one point or another. If you think about if you had a big presentation or a big speech, you might have thought about your nervousness in relation to this big presentation or this big speech as a potential useful mechanism that you're feeling. So maybe you would think, oh, hey, I know I'm super, super nervous about this speech or presentation, but I'm going to use this nervousness to work a little bit harder, to prepare a little bit more. And that's harnessing. You're using that negative emotion to get something good and valuable and move closer to your overall goal.
And then I'll sort of close right here in the center with a confidence and poise that, well, they probably won't have seen up until this point.
Also, if you kind of took it a little bit further, you could even think, well, the fact that I'm nervous actually indicates that this is something important to me. This is actually a piece of information, and my mind and myself is showing me that this is something that is of value to me and it is important, and I want to focus in on this. Without that nervousness, we would not be able to really see what's important to us. We would kind of treat a big presentation the same way we would treat answering a random email. And you can see how that would really make us super inefficient because we need that negative emotion to really showcase to us, hey, focus on this. This is important. That random email from, whatever marketing agency that's trying to sell you something is not as useful, right? Because that email, a random email, does not elicit nervousness for you in your body because it doesn't matter. So harnessing is obviously a lot more useful than, say, avoiding an emotion, which would lead to maybe drinking or overeating or insert whatever activity you do here to avoid emotions. We all have something that we do where nobody is really perfect in feeling all of their emotion. And we can all empathize with, kind of using something else to avoid feeling an emotion because feeling nervous doesn't really actually feel good, right? The thing is that we can get better at feeling our negative emotions. Again, negative. And the way we do this is to actually by feeling them. So in avoiding feeling a negative emotion, people actually kind of make them more scary than they need to be. Avoidance typically makes problems like seem huge when they're actually fairly minuscule. And so in actually approaching the emotion, in kind of going into the emotion and feeling it and really trying to get the most wisdom out of that negative emotion, you're going to be able to get better at feeling the negative emotions. And then they're not really going to be such a big deal. But if you continue to kind of avoid the emotion in a lot of the avoidance behaviors that we all do, drinking, eating, watching Netflix is, the best one, obviously. Okay, so the thing is, if we really think about it, none of us would really want to live in a world without negative emotion. And we probably wouldn't be able to survive either if we all went around just feeling positive emotion. I think we can all kind of agree on that. And if we didn't have sadness, we wouldn't have happiness. Much of the human experience is really 50-50. A lot of contentment can come into your life when you really accept that. When you realize that it's super, super normal to feel negative emotion about half of the time. And that is okay. It does not mean you're failing at life. It does not mean you're an unhappy person. It doesn't mean that you can't be an Instagram influencer who looks happy all the time. All of those people are feeling the same 50% negative emotion as the rest of us. Nobody, regardless of what your Facebook feed tells you, nobody is feeling 100% positive emotion all the time. And so this, if you can take away anything from this video, and you honestly don't even have to do anything, you don't have to do a journaling prompt, you don't have to do any type of meditation exercises, it's literally zero effort. Just remember that life is 50-50. You will feel 50% negative emotion, you will feel 50% positive emotion, and everyone else is the same as you, and everyone else is feeling 50-50 as well, and it is okay and it is normal. Okay, so back to kind of the reason why we don't want to get rid of the negative emotion. There would be no joy without despair. We literally wouldn't know that there is joy because you need that you need that foil of despair, kind of like day and night. So right now, many of us are feeling kind of bored and lonely because we're in quarantine. I know in a lot of countries, it's another round of quarantine, a third round, a fourth round, and we just are not feeling the best emotions. Boredom and loneliness does not feel good. Most of us don't go out seeking boredom and loneliness. But if you really think about it, this is actually kind of a good thing. And I'm not trying to be toxically positive here, but I think we should really think about how these negative emotions are clues and signals to our values and our needs as humans. They are not these like horrible things trying to ruin our lives and cause us pain, because what would be the point of that? There would literally be no evolutionary mechanism to just feeling pure pain and having no purpose for it. So if you really break it down, boredom, it means that you're not getting as much intellectual stimulation as you would like. You want more excitement, you want more interest in your life. And I mean, I think it would be actually strange if you weren't feeling bored and lonely. You kind of want to feel bored and lonely when you're in quarantine. It actually shows that, you want to do interesting things and you want to be around people. You have a need for social interaction and you have a need for cognitive stimulation. And we know from the research that these are very valid, normal human needs. So instead of really kind of avoiding the boredom and the loneliness, what you could do is really kind of use them as clues and as wisdom to what you need and what you should be doing in your life. And in kind of leaning into the boredom and loneliness and really accepting them for what they are, as clues, as wisdom from our minds and bodies of things that we need in our lives, instead of these like horrible pieces of pain that are like raining down on us, we can really start to solve for the boredom and loneliness. We can think like, well, it's normal for me to be bored. Maybe I need a little bit more stimulation. Maybe I need to, look into starting an online course or reading a new book or changing something up. And obviously, none of these suggestions are necessarily perfect, but at least it kind of widens your ability to start looking for solutions instead of avoiding the boredom and loneliness, because you only have a certain amount of energy in the day. It's not that you have like endless energy. And a lot of us, what we do is we spend all of our energy in avoiding and kind of trying to brace ourselves against the negative emotions. So, you feel bored, you feel lonely, and you're like, no, like, it's fine. I don't feel bored and lonely. And you kind of try to stuff them down. The thing is, when you try to stuff down emotions, when you try to kind of avoid feeling bad, that takes a lot of energy. It's almost like when you push like a beach ball into water and you kind of push it, but the beach ball wants to spring up. It wants to be let go. And negative emotions are like this. They want to be seen because they are telling us very valuable information about our needs and clues to what would help us survive and to what would help us thrive. So instead of kind of like using all of our strength to suppress that beach ball of emotion, we can just hold it and accept that we're bored and lonely, and then use the energy instead to find creative solutions to kind of meeting these needs. So we all have heard of all the kind of new ways people are connecting and trying to talk online, trying to build communities. And there's all kinds of different ways to do this. And I bet all of you have amazing ideas on how to meet your cognitive and social needs. You just haven't really asked your brain that question. Instead, you've kind of asked your brain the question, like, how do I not feel lonely and bored? And the thing is, you're not really going to come up with much when you're asking a negative question like that. So how to not feel bored and lonely that's not a very interesting question. Then you're just going to neutral, right? You're basically asking like, how do I feel completely average? Or how do I basically not feel pain? I would actually think that most of you don't want to just feel nothing. You want to feel connection. You want to feel interest. So instead of asking, how do I feel not bored, not lonely, you might want to ask, how do I find connection in my life? When was the last time I felt truly connected to someone? What were kind of the ways that I made that happen? Or when was the last time I was really interested in something? When was the last time like I was in flow? And what were the mechanisms that allowed me to be there? Ask those questions, and then you're going to get way better responses and way more creative solutions to your psychological and social needs. Okay, so in summary, it is completely normal to feel negative emotion, and your negative emotions are trying to tell you signals of your needs. And it's kind of wisdom from your body and mind that you can actually utilize and harness to your full advantage. And when you try to suppress negative emotions because we in society feel like maybe we should be happy all the time and that's a measure of success, that's very common here in the United States. We kind of have a happiness culture in which it's very important to appear to be happy all the time. The thing is, that's not super useful. And if we kind of shift this and really understand that life is 50-50 and that when negative emotions do crop up, we're going to use them to our advantage. We're going to take that information and make our lives better. We're not going to just use all of our energy in resisting the emotion and then be left with nothing in order to create solutions. All right, so I hope that was helpful. And remember, if you are feeling a lot of negative emotion in this quarantine, in this year, as we go into 2021, that is completely normal. And also, if you aren't feeling negative emotion in the quarantine, if you're thinking the quarantine's like the best thing that ever happened to you, that also showcases that you're extremely adaptable to different situations. People are extremely different in their needs and in their perceptions. So be kind to each other, and comment below if you have found any really interesting or creative ways on how to meet your psychological, social, cognitive needs during the quarantine. All right, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please subscribe below, and I will see you guys next time.